Right, 100% you're on. You can take it.
Okay, good evening, gents. I don't see any ladies tonight. They are absent. It's Women's Month is finished, I think. Ah, there's, sorry. Yes, we started. We started with transmitters on Tuesday. Or when last week? Where are we now? Tuesday. Last week we started with transmitters. Tonight we're carrying on. We're starting to look at receivers, and there's two chapters. Chapter 23, which we're going to look at the fundamentals of receivers, and then on Thursday we're going to look at the second chapter on receivers, and then we should all be finished and done with receivers. Then all those building blocks is out the way. So, come on, let's get to the right screen. Receivers. The purpose of a receiver is to select the correct or the wanted electromagnetic wave induced into my antenna and convert it to a human understandable output. Remember, my antenna is receiving electromagnetic waves of multiple frequencies, multiple sources, some wanted, some unwanted. And the challenge of a receiver is to pick the right one. That frequency that I want to listen to, that's the one my receiver needs to pick. And it needs to ignore everybody else. It needs to discard everything else that you do not need. Only that one frequency is the one you want. When we look at receivers, we've got to look at noise sources. It's a very important part of receiving noise. We're going to look at receiver characteristic, what makes a receiver good or bad. Then we're going to start with some types of receivers. The basic, most elementary receiver you can find is called a diode receiver, and we'll look at that. The next receiver in terms of complexity and price and usefulness is called a tuned radio frequency receiver. And the one that follows on that one is called a direct conversion receiver. Now, you have all these different receivers because they all serve different purposes and obviously different cost implications in the past and different benefits. And then the next chapter, which is coming on Thursday, will look at the super heterodyne receiver, and we're going to look at the modern digital signal processing receivers that we get nowadays. So that's more or less the stuff we will cover tonight in this lecture. Let's start with the first one. When you go to a rugby match at Loftus, there is so much noise around you that the person that is going with you to the match actually needs to talk louder and harder for you to hear what that person is saying. And it's the same when it comes to receivers. The receiver's ability to receive signals is very dependent on noise. And some of you may have seen they had this massive dish which was in the middle of the forest in Brazil, which they were using to look at signals coming from cosmos, I don't know, millions of light years away. They were looking for noise that was so small that they wanted to discard any other possible noises around them. So yeah, atmospheric noise is a very important one. It changes by season, it changes by day. It also changes depending on the mood the sun is in. If the sun is upset, and it generates a lot of explosions or eruptions, the atmospheric noise will go up. We also get galactic noise, which is seasonal dependent. It depends a lot on the position of Earth in comparison with the rest of the galaxy. Because remember, every sun, every star radiates noise, and that noise ultimately comes to Earth. And that's typically galactic noise. The other one we get is ground noise. When stuff isn't grounded properly, and we'll discuss it when we do the lecture on electromagnetic interference and compatibility. There's a difference between grounding and earthing. Earthing and grounding is not the same thing. When we work with transceivers, receivers, and transmitters, the one that's important for us is noise, like from Jupiter, yes. The one we work with in our Radio Shack is grounding, and we'll discuss that. A good ground, what it does, it short circuits noise into the earth for me. It gets rid of a lot of noise because it short circuits it down to earth. The other one is electrical noise. Your especially inductive things like electric drills, your microwave, these things tend to generate electrical noise, which can completely blanket out whatever you're trying to listen to. And then the last one, which is very important, is electronic noise. Electronic noise can be in two sources. Either the neighbor's solar inverter is creating a lot of electronic noise, or also my radio is creating electronic noise. Remember when we did oscillators, we spoke about when I switch on the power to an oscillator, the first thing it does, it just spurts out a random broadband noise signal until I get the oscillator to get going on a fixed frequency. It's because of the electronic noise. So yes, there's a reason why one receiver will cost you $100 and another receiver $10,000 and another receiver $50,000. It's got a lot to do with the electronics that's inside the receiver to make it as quiet as possible. And obviously, the lower the electronic noise, the higher the price tag goes for your receiver. Okay, one of the things which is important when we talk receivers is a thing which they call signal to noise ratio. If my signal, for example, is 20 dBs, my noise is 20 dBs, it gives me a signal to noise ratio of 2 dBs, which is pretty crappy. I'm going to struggle to receive that signal with a 2 dB signal to noise ratio. The norm, I just want to turn this radio down a bit. The norm is to have a signal to noise ratio greater than 20 dBs if you want good signal reception. It doesn't mean if it's below 20 dBs you won't hear it. You will still hear it, but it could be noisy. It could be difficult to distinguish what is being said. So the norm is 20 dBs is an acceptable level for good signal reception. So if they ask you for signal to noise ratio, it's basically signal plus noise divided by the noise. Sorry, I've got a visitor in my shack that is looking for attention. Okay, signal to noise ratio. Then some of the characteristics which we look at when we want to buy a receiver. One of the things we look at is the sensitivity. So in other words, what is the smallest signal that my receiver will be capable of receiving with me, hearing it, to understanding what the signal is about, or what the data is about. If it's somebody talking, in other words, I should be able to easily hear the person talking. So sensitivity is normally the lowest level or the lowest value my receiver can handle. It varies, the unit of measurement changes depending on if it's an FM receiver or if it's a single sideband receiver. But it's normally represented by a value called dBm. And when we did dBs, you will remember there was one of the elements that we looked at that was dBm. The next one is called selectivity. Selectivity is the ability of my receiver to discard unwanted signals and select the correct signal. But now where does this become important? If we look at a mixer, what did we say happens with a mixer? I've got the plus product of the two signals and I've got the minus product of the two signals. So if you go and do your mathematics, you will see that it is actually possible to have an image frequency or a mirror frequency that would satisfy the same equation through the mixer as my normal signal would. So selectivity is the ability of my receiver to ignore that mirror or that image frequency that could be present. The next one is dynamic range. In other words, what is my receiver's ability to receive from the smallest to the most strongest signal possible? In other words, as an argument's sake, let's say my receiver's got 100 dBs of dynamic range, which is pretty good. It means that there could be 100 dB difference between the smallest signal defined by sensitivity and the loudest or the strongest signal, which is going to saturate my receiver and I won't be able to hear anything. So dynamic range is the difference between the strongest and the weakest signal my receiver can receive. And then the last one, which we're going to discuss in the following slides, is the receiver design. So which type of receiver am I using? A diode receiver, a TRF, or a direct conversion receiver? Or a super heterodyne receiver, for that matter. Okay. Let me just give a halt there. Any questions up to this point? And I'm just trying to get rid of the visitor that doesn't want to leave my shack. Okay. Some more on receiver characteristics. When I work with my receiver, there's three things which becomes important in my receiver. The one is called AGC, or automatic gain control. So what does automatic gain control do? If we look at a receiver's front end or the amplifier, the automatic gain control will reduce the gain of my receiver so that I don't saturate my receiver. So it improves my dynamic range. So if I've got AGC in my receiver, it normally improves my dynamic range. Okay. Beat frequency oscillator, BFO. Why does that exist? Okay, if we look at a CW signal, I'm turning the carrier on and off. Da-da, 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 as I'm sending the Morse code symbols. I'm turning the transmitter on and off. How do I hear on the receiver side that wonderful ba-ba, 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 that wonderful signal that rings in your ears when you listen to a Morse code signal? That is because I have a beat frequency oscillator. So what the purpose is of a beat frequency oscillator, it does something which they call carrier insertion. So in other words, when I'm doing Morse code, it sees every time there's carrier present, it will switch on for example, a 1 kilohertz signal to ring in my ear. When the carrier disappears, it will switch off. Until there's a carrier again, it will turn back on. So that's how I can actually hear Morse code on the speaker of my radio, because I'm making use of a beat frequency oscillator. They also use a beat frequency oscillator to reinsert the carrier signal which is missing in a SSB signal. So if you look at a SSB transmission, why do we say it was so efficient? Because I got rid of the one sideband and I've got rid of the carrier. So to be able to intelligently demodulate the SSB signal, I need to do carrier reinsertion. And one of the things they use for that is a beat frequency oscillator, which would then obviously operate on the frequency that the original carrier was meant to be. And then the last one we discussed was signal to noise ratio. So yeah, it's a lot of woo-wah tonight, but these are things which is all in your manual. And if you look at the sample questions, you will see these things do appear in the sample questions. Okay, the most easiest receiver to build, and I don't know who's built these, but as a school kid, I was experimenting with these receivers because they were cheap to build. We had a guy in town which ran a little shop called Pretoria Electronics. Old man that used to run the shop. And he used to sell us the components to build these things for next to nothing. You could take nearly one day's pocket money and go and buy components to build this thing. What it does, it's got an inductor. And if we go back to our theory, remember now our theory on resonance, I've got a parallel resonance circuit here. I've got a capacitor, which I can change the capacitance. That's why it's got an arrow through it. I can change the capacitance. And I've got an inductor, which goes off to my antenna. This capacitor is only there to decouple the antenna from the coil so that I don't load the resonance circuit. Remember we spoke about buffers and loading of tank circuits or resonance circuits when we did resonance. So that's all that capacitor does. So when this thing resonates on LM radio, or I don't know who's still transmitting on medium wave. Let's say the BBC is still transmitting on medium wave. It resonates on the BBC's frequency, and the diode was my demodulator. This was just a filter capacitor to smooth out any harmonics or any RF that may have leaked through, and I could listen to it on earphones or a speaker. So this was a diode receiver. The secret of it was this little baby, which was called, in those days, they called it a katsnoordiode. I don't know of an English name for it. Cat's whisker, most probably. Cat's whisker diode. The PN junction, which you did with Louis when you did diodes, this little thing you see here, which is silver and gold, is the PN junction. And this is just an electrode which then pushes onto that PN junction. Okay, so this was the secret weapon that made it possible to do a little diode receiver in the old days, using a cat's whisker or a katsnoordiode. What did these things look like? Here's an example of one. You can see you could build these things. You could build them on a piece of wood, and you could listen to anything in the world. So there's a coil here, and you can see the coil is tapped. If we go back to that schematic we had, the coil is tapped, so that goes off to my antenna. And this one was actually very ingenious. It had a transistor so that you could amplify the signal coming out of it. But there is the diode, the crystal diode, which I showed you an example of, and my variable capacitor that changes the resonant frequency of the coil and the capacitor together. So this is what a good old typical diode receiver looked like. You can still build it today. They work very well to receive medium wave signals. Foxhole radio, yeah, it's a war thing. They work pretty good to receive medium wave signals and short wave signals up to about 10, 12 megahertz. Then they don't work so lekker after that anymore. But it's a good experiment to play with if you've got something, haven't got anything to do on a Saturday afternoon. Okay, tuned radio frequency receivers was very popular in the 50s and the 60s. What happened is I had multiple stages. Sorry. I had multiple stages, amplifiers, and bandpass filters, which filtered my signal that I wanted all the way to my demodulator and my audio amplifier. What this little arrow or this little line means is these were ganged. So in other words, if I changed and if we look at a picture of one now, you'll see why. If I change the capacitance on this filter, it also changed this one and it also changed this one. So part of a tuned radio frequency receiver was it was difficult to set up. Once it was working, it was working. But you had all these ganged resonance circuits which you had to change simultaneously. Okay, example of a good old one. Yeah, you see your capacitors, 1, 2, 3, they're all on one shaft. So as I changed the frequency knob on the front of the radio, all three of these were changed together. And obviously there was inductors associated with them. And it would all change to exactly the same frequency all the time. So this was a good old typical tuned radio frequency receiver that you got many moons ago. Okay, so the characteristic is this ganged stages which have to change simultaneously, otherwise it doesn't work. So in other words, as an example, I want to receive 10 megahertz. This bandpass filter has got to be 10 megahertz. This one's got to be 10 megahertz. This one has got to be 10 megahertz. And to achieve that, I have to change their resonance circuits in harmony or in synchronization with each other. Okay. That's what it looked like in the good old days. Direct conversion receivers. This was sort of the step, let's say the step after diode receivers. It was very easy for school kids to do as a project. If you want to build a straightforward, easy receiver, direct conversion was a good choice. Nowadays, with all these digital SDR receivers, it's basically made this obsolete, but you can still build it if you want to. So I've got my antenna, I've got my amplifier that changes my gain, so in other words, amplifies it. I go into a mixer. And the mixer, what it does is the mixer changes the frequency to baseband. Okay, because that's what a direct conversion receiver is. So I convert one time from high frequency to audible frequency. This is a variable gain amplifier. So typically there would be some AGC somewhere that changes the gain of this amplifier to keep the level constant that goes for demodulation. Okay, so a characteristic of direct conversion, I convert my antenna signal directly to baseband. What do they look like? This is a kit you can buy. It's not expensive. I think this kit is less than 200 Rand. The last time I looked, and it receives, this one receives 40 meters, 7 megahertz. So everything that you see in there is in the circuit. There's this tune part in front, and I suspect these coils have got something to do with his mixer, and then his filters and his demodulation, etc. But this is what a typical direct conversion receiver looks like. Okay, so why do we get these different receivers? Okay, a diode receiver, it's a simple electronics, or simple to build. Disadvantage, it's got a very low sensitivity because it relies on the signal must be strong enough for that cat's whisker diode to conduct and demodulate. So if the signal level is below the threshold of my cat's whisker diode, you can't hear anything. Because it only demodulates half of the wave, if you now think back of AM modulation, it actually had a sideband, or actually had modulation on top and modulation at the bottom. So what the cat's whisker diode does, it only gives me half of the audio. So the quality that you hear is not brilliant, but you can hear. It is very noise sensitive with that massive coil. All sorts of noise just interferes with it. Back in the days, yeah, Maplin had them as well. Tuned radio frequency, it is complex because remember we said everything needs to be in synchronization. So if I've got a 3-stage tuned radio frequency receiver or a 4-stage, you got them up to even 6-stage tuned frequency receivers. All those tuned stages have got to be in synchronization, so it makes the electronics complex. Sensitivity is poor, and selectivity is incredibly poor. Remember we said selectivity is the ability to only select the signal I want, and any image or mirror frequency is not, doesn't go through, doesn't get selected. Direct conversion receivers, it's medium complexity electronics. Selectivity is medium, but they've got very low dynamic range. Even with that variable gain amplifier that I've showed you in the circuit, the dynamic range is still not brilliant on a direct conversion. Okay, and then remember the output of any receiver is audio baseband signal, or it could be digital baseband signal as well. I should actually put that in there as well. So if it's a digital receiver, I'm busy doing FSK or one of those modes. It will also give me baseband digital 0s and 1s. Okay, and then we will next week, next week, Thursday, we will look at superhets and we will look at STRs. Those are the ones that's in your manual, Henry.
Right, dis so. Ja, ek weet nie of daar vrae is nie.
No, I think, Henry, next time round, I had a look at it. We can actually combine 23 and 24 again.
Okay, just make a note of that.
Yeah, I'll make a note. So on the next course, I think we can combine 23 and 24.
Yeah, because we are busy. We did put together the schedule for next year, but I'll just make a note here as well that we can combine. You say 22 and 23.
23 and 24 receivers.
23.
Yeah, receivers. Yeah, and superhet and STR. Yeah.
Okay. We'll
Okay.
do that in future, Lotte.
Okay.
Is that?
That's that. I don't know if we want to look at the questions. Let me just get them open. I haven't got them open yet. RAE, where's RAE manual? Give me the manual. And we want chapter 23. Where are we now? See, where's chapter 3 now? So we got 4 to go. Transmission. No, it's up a bit. Page 208. Okay. 208. Sorry. Yeah, I should have opened it before the lecture started. Sorry. Okay. And there is a total of 12 questions according to me. Yep. Yeah, the specification 1 microvolt to provide better than 20 dB signal to noise ratio in a pass band of less than 1 kilohertz refers to. Complete silence.
I think it's sensitivity.
It is sensitivity A. Okay.
That pass band parts. It almost wants to trick me. I don't.
Okay.
I don't know. I was a bit.
Yeah. The ability of a receiver to extract weak signals and amplify them to a readable level is known as the receiver's
Sensitivity again.
sensitivity again. Okay. The sensitivity of a communication receiver can best be varied by.
I'll take a flyer at this one. Is it
The gain?
Bravo?
Or,
I'm going.
yeah, Bravo.
Bravo RF.
Bravo. Altering the RF gain. Yes, correct. Let's go up. The dynamic range of a receiver can be described as. Remember
Delta.
my description I gave you of dynamic range is a bit different to this, but it is exactly the same thing.
Delta seems
Delta,
most
yeah.
correct.
The range
Delta,
of
yeah.
signal strengths. Okay. So it's the difference between the weakest and the strongest, which is the range of signal strengths. Okay. The RF stage of a receiver is used to.
I'll say improve its sensitivity.
Yes, improve sensitivity. The ability of a receiver to receive the desired signal whilst rejecting other frequencies is known as
Selectivity.
selectivity. Yeah. The circuit that lowers a radio's receiver gain as the received signal becomes stronger is known as
AGC.
AGC.
Yeah.
What is ALC?
Is that automatic level control?
Yes.
Yeah.
What is it?
What do you mean? What does it do?
Yeah.
I think that's for receiving, isn't it, or something? I don't know. I've seen it on some of the HF rigs, but I'm not too sure what it does.
Remember we discussed it last time in transmitters. They're going to put this, if they ask you this question, they do it on purpose. ALC is applicable to transmitters. It regulates the output power so that you don't overmodulate or overdrive.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah,
that's ALC. AGC is used in receivers.
Okay. Yeah, no, I got that. Yeah.
So remember that if you ever get this question, AGC is receivers, ALC is transmitters. They could also ask you in the transmitter question, what is used to control the output power of a transmitter amplifier? And then it's ALC. What is an S meter?
Yeah, Charlie.
Where we now?
Meter to measure
Yes,
relative signal strength.
signal strength in a receiver. Yeah.
You always want that very high when then you know you've got a good system.
Yeah. It is calibrated in dBs, but it is relative. It's not absolute. Okay, 9. The output of a direct conversion receiver is the difference in frequency between.
I'm going to go with alpha. Don't know if that's correct.
The output from a direct conversion receiver is the difference in frequency between. What does a mixer do? Let me ask you that question.
It must combine two signals.
Adds and subtracts. Yeah.
Add and subtract, yeah.
It can either add them together, or it can subtract them together. Subtract them from each other or add them to each other. Okay. Now, what did we say for a direct conversion receiver? We said that converts the received signal directly to baseband to audio. Okay. So to do that, I've got a local oscillator and I've got a mixer. So in a direct conversion receiver, the difference in frequency between the incoming signal and the local oscillator, the output of a direct conversion receiver. So let's take an example. Let's say my output signal is 1 kilohertz, okay? And my received signal is 1 megahertz. So I have got to have a local oscillator which runs at 9,99999 megahertz. So 10 minus 9,9999 megahertz will give me 1 kilohertz. That's a direct conversion. So the output of a direct conversion receiver is the difference in frequency between. I don't know, let me go back to this. This may make it easier for you. Sorry, where are we now? Direct conversion. Shift F5. Okay, here we go. So I convert my 10 megahertz signal, I convert that to audio 1 kilohertz immediately. So what's this? This output 1 kilohertz. That is the difference between this signal and this signal. You agree with me? Because it's a mixer. A mixer can give me either the two added together, or the mixer can give me the two subtracted from each other. So if I want 1 kilohertz here, it means I subtract the local oscillator from this one. So if I go back here now, where we're now, the output of a direct conversion receiver is the difference in frequency between the incoming signal and the local oscillator, D. All happy with that?
Roger.
Okay. 10. A radio receiver that amplifies and filters the incoming signal at RF and then uses a diode detector to demodulate an AM signal would be called a?
So that's a tuned radio frequency.
Charlie.
Think carefully.
It's not. Okay.
No. A radio receiver that amplifies and filters the incoming signal at RF and then uses a diode detector to demodulate the AM signal is called C, a tuned radio frequency receiver. You are correct. It's 10C, yeah. They're trying to confuse you with the crystal set. That's why I said think carefully.
Oh, the crystal detector.
Yes.
That diode. Okay.
Yes. They're trying to confuse you. want you to pick this one and not the right one. Okay. A preamp with a low noise temperature is advertised for use with HF receivers. You are tempted to buy one. Okay, a preamp with a low noise temperature is advertised. What does low noise temperature mean? It means it's got a low electronic noise. Okay,
Yeah.
Is advertised for use with HF receivers. You are tempted to buy one.
I said Delta, save the money, because isn't the band noise predominant on HF?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
Correct.
so
It is. Yeah. There's other ways to reduce the noise without putting a low noise amplifier in. So D is correct. Save the money at HF, it will not improve receiving performance. Just as an example, I don't know about Henry, but my HF radios here in the shack, most of the times I operate with an attenuator on. I find I get better signal to noise ratio with the attenuator on than with the attenuator off. So yes, it makes it less sensitive, but that little bit it makes it less sensitive improves my signal to noise ratio.
So is that like a type of a filter then that you're using, or is it?
It's a type of a preamplifier that they have in the HF radios.
But what does that do? Cut out?
It just reduces the gain a little bit.
Okay.
It reduces the front end gain. Okay. You are shopping for a receiver for weak signal UHF applications. You should buy the one that features
low noise temperature.
Low noise temperature. One thing you will learn, electronic noise goes up with frequency. If you start working at the satellite frequencies, electronic noise is incredible. I mean, I can, without even listening to the satellite, just by turning my satellite receiver on, the noise goes immediately. So on UHF, you are looking at stuff which has got low electronic noise. Okay. That's it. That's the questions for tonight.
Can I ask a question? Early on, right in the beginning, obviously you said a very good point, which was, a cheap radio versus, the more expensive radio, better receiver, etc. But I'm getting something strange on VHF where I'm receiving the AM signals from OR Tambo. And it is sometimes blowing my 2 meters, yes, it's sky high. And so, yeah, I don't know what would be the best to try limit that. What would you suggest?
So you want to attenuate
buy
it?
a more expensive radio, and not my imported, my cheaper. I won't mention brand names.
Yeah. The only thing I can think of is a weaker antenna.
Yeah, then I'll sickle to hear you guys, man.
No, but I mean, if you're busy listening to the aircraft band, use a weaker antenna.
No, well, I'm talking about the 2 meter repeaters on VHF on FM.
Yeah.
But I'm obviously now picking up the AM aircraft signals from OR Tambo, obviously through wherever. But it doesn't make sense to me because most of their antenna array is quite far from me. So I don't know what but I sometimes they come in clear, like I'm listening to them on the airband, basically.
Is it the aircraft or is it the base station?
I hear tower and two plane conversations. So yeah, sometimes it comes in bursts. Other times it might last for a second or two. S9 squelch doesn't help.
Yeah, you're lucky if you can hear the tower. I just hear the planes. That's all.
No, obviously, if I tune to the airband frequency, then they're coming crystal clear, and yeah, 'cause I'm virtually on their doorstep. So yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I've tried, the cheap route, the coax stub route, but yeah, that just also.
No,
Yeah, I need to-
coax taproot doesn't give you enough attenuation.
Yeah, the frequencies are so close to each other.
Yeah.
I'll start cutting off then the amateur band. So
Yeah.
it's. But anyway, yeah, I need to still investigate and see what's available. But it's irritating to. Yeah, it's like hearing the guys doing what Lumiere did when they key up the mic the whole time on the repeaters.
Yeah. Ka-chunking.
Yeah, ka-chunking.
Yeah.
It's like that.
Yeah.
I get that from the airport constantly. It's irritating.
What I did, because my amateur radio is also quite sensitive, I just got a cheap SDR which is running my aircraft stuff. The 1090 megahertz data transmissions and 130 megahertz AM transmissions that I'd receive with the SDR.
Yeah, no, obviously I haven't investigated SDR on my side, so it's one thing I'll probably still get into later on.
Yeah.
But no, I enjoy listening to the air traffic. It's quite interesting at times, specifically with the go-arounds, and I quite enjoy it.
Okay. That's it, Henry.